Hello, this is Mantra from Video Gamers, and today I'm going to be showing you some clips of Secret World PvP. Secret World, or rather The Secret World, is an MMO that's going to be released relatively soon, I believe, and here we are playing in the beta of the game. At present, we're fighting a Templar Custodian. This Custodian is aligned with the Templar faction, which is one of the three factions of the game you can select from when creating your character initially. We are playing on the Illuminati side, and the third faction that you don't see anything of here is the Dragon faction. One of the first things I'll note is that the most popular faction on our server seemed to be that of Templar, followed by the faction we were currently playing, Illuminati, and as far in last place was the Dragon faction, which more often than not was playing with far fewer players than you would really want in most of these situations. And that number were both our own faction, the Illuminati, and the Templars, as you can see us fighting here. The current PvP area we're in is about controlling various wells, which are basically areas you resurrect from, and these facility centers, which are guarded by, as we saw just a little bit ago, those Templar Custodian things, or if Illuminati controlled an Illuminati Custodian, for example. The wells can be captured fairly easily. You just need to run up and right-click them. So right now we're defending one of them from the Templars that are attacking it. It's relatively easy to guard a well in this game, actually, because when you die, you resurrect almost immediately. So that can make it quite difficult to really make any headway towards capturing one, especially if there's equal number or greater number of enemies guarding it than you have attacking. I looked at the map there for a few seconds, or rather my friend who's playing the character we see his perspective from looked at the map there for a few seconds, and you could see that we had various areas highlighted: red for Templar, blue for Illuminati, and green for the Dragons. I actually was not able to record this from my perspective, but just so you know, I was playing the character that's known as Cloud x Sephiroth x Sasuke. My friend was playing Cheeky x Voldemort x 360 Monkey. These names are ironic and not intended to be taken seriously at all. We just sort of did them as a joke. Right at the present, we were playing characters with the assault rifle specialization, and I found it visually the most pleasing and thought it was an interesting style. But there are many, many other styles, some of which you'll see reflected in this video, and some I didn't really see any of, at least not that I recognized while we were playing the game. We're wearing the heavy armor suits, which is something you select as a part of your loadout before you enter the PvP battlefield. There are 3 different types of armor you can wear, and everybody is put into one of these suits, so you're not actually going to see your normal character, not your appearance, not your equipment, anything else like that, anything except for your weapon, that is, when you're in these battlefields. So we were wearing the high-powered armor, I believe that's what it's called, basically plus defense, that kind of thing, helps you survive better. I personally enjoyed this the most, because survivability seemed to be the biggest thing you want in this PvP. The others available are one that increases your damage, primarily for weapons like blades, guns, things like that, and one that enhances the effectiveness of your magic, so for offensive and defensive spellcasters, healers, and whatnot. This area is incredibly large, and from what I've heard, it can hold up to 200 players at one time, although I'm not certain if there are specific limits on one faction's amount of players or another. But we weren't playing on the highest population server, which I'd heard had many, many more players fighting these areas, but we still had a decent number of people battling here. We were decently powerful after a bit of playing, and I wasn't really able to get a sense for whether one of the specializations was much more powerful than the other. I personally favored the assault rifle for the range damage it gives you, obviously, and the ability to kite other players, which is much more useful when you're not getting, attacked by a whole bunch of them and cornered like that. It's very hard to actually escape from players in this game, because there are far more abilities to slow people down than there are to attempt to get away. So, yeah, that's basically it for Fusang. There's not much more to say about it, as we didn't really get a chance to do much more beyond just fighting at the wells. We didn't have enough people to take on any of the custodians when I was playing in it with my friend, and we didn't really see much of a presence from the third faction either, so we didn't have any really neat, 3-way faction battles, that kind of thing. The other battleground that I want to talk to you about is Stonehenge. In Stonehenge, the objective is to keep as many players in the center as possible. As you accrue points over time, the more people you have in the center. Whichever faction has the most gets more points, and if you have enough, it says something along the lines of X faction. So let's say the Illuminati is dominating the center, and you start to obtain even more points more quickly until the other factions inevitably show up to ruin the parade. Stonehenge was alright as a battlefield. It's not terribly interesting. It's relatively small. The one thing I did like about it as compared with Fusang is that it has a timer on how long it takes between resurrections, which helps make the PvP more skill-based and less based around, you know, Zerg rushing people from the spawn, which is most of what Fusang boiled down to. You'll find people using line of sight quite often in Stonehenge. We were doing that ourselves, especially because we were ranged, so it did seem a bit difficult for the melee characters to do much in many situations. The dragon, oddly enough, in this Stonehenge were equal number, I believe, with Templar and ourselves, the Illuminati. On the other Stonehenges we played, though, the dragon were heavily outnumbered, as is usual for pretty much all the battlefields at all times. This imbalance would definitely be a problem in longer retail game. It's something I'd worry about. I just don't think the Dragon faction is as interesting as the Templar or the Illuminati. And personally, I like the look of the Illuminati, but the Templars are quite cool and interesting too, as is made obvious by the fact that they usually outnumbered us during the beta. Stonehenge doesn't have much more to it beyond just trying to basically play, you know, King of the Center here. It looks interesting, I guess, but you know, it's not something I'd want to do for an incredibly long period of time. The final third battlefield that we had access to, I'm hoping they have more available in the retail game and, you know, in later expansions, patches, that kind of thing, was El Dorado. The goal of El Dorado is to keep a hold of these relics, and a player picks up a relic, it then floats around him, making it relatively obvious he has it. And if that's not obvious enough, there's also a target indicator label, kind of like you see detailing the various objectives, as you know, in Fusang, for example. So you always know where the relic is on your team and on the enemy team. This means that there's not much hiding going on in El Dorado, and much more just battles over protecting people with the relics on your side, or attempting to take down enemies with the relics on the enemy side. There are a total of around 4, maybe a couple more than that relics. I didn't really get a good sense for that, but I do know that if you hold 4 or more, assuming there are more actually, then a countdown timer will begin that will allow you to win the game in like 1.5, 2 minutes, something along those lines. Otherwise, the game goes on for a much longer period of time, and you get a number of points based upon how many relics you hold. So assuming nobody gathers critical mass of relics, you'll instead be basically playing keep away with the other teams, hoping that your team can protect you well enough so you can hold on to the greatest amount of relics for the longest period of time so you can win based upon points. El Dorado was where the faction balance was perhaps most obvious, aside from some times in Fusang, because I never really saw the dragons have more than 3 or 4 people, and the Templar and Illuminati almost always had around 10, if not more. I'm not sure if there are any numerical limits on the players in these battlefields, although I definitely got the sense there were, because I didn't see outrageous numbers of Illuminati or Templar in these ever, just, you know, much more than the dragons ever had. El Dorado was probably the most fun battlefield of the 3, just because it didn't have as many problems with numbers and balance between my faction and the Templars, and the dragons were pretty much a non-entity in all 3 of the battlefields, to be honest. So, you know, I would feel pretty bad if I was a dragon player, to be honest, with any of the 3 battlefields. So just thinking about it purely from an Illuminati perspective, it was pretty fun. It had the most interesting back and forth battles, because even if you're losing the entire match, if you managed to get a hold of all 4 relics at the same time, then you could come back and, you know, get a comeback victory relatively easily. That happened a couple times in our El Dorado matches. We also lost badly a couple times too, which is rather irritating, but you know, it can go both ways, that kind of thing. That's about it for the PvP aspects of Secret World. As I said earlier, we didn't have access to any more than these 3 battlefields. It was fun, it was enjoyable, but there are some you know, concerns I would have over the long-term viability of the PvP, simply because one of the factions is so underrepresented. You know, that really takes away some of the fun of the game, when the third faction can't really do anything besides, you know, mess around with you a little bit here and there, but otherwise get dominated by your sheer numbers, if nothing else. Yeah, so I suppose that's all of the comments I have today for the Secret World PvP. We'll be covering more of the PvE aspects of the game in some of the other videos that we're going to be making. So, thanks for your time. Later.